Hey all, Alex here at your home of the Music Deep Dive, and today it is time for a review of the 1850 novel by Charles Dickens, The Personal History, Adventures, Experience, and Observation of David Copperfield the Younger of Blunderstone Rookery. For short, David Copperfield. Uh, of course, this is yet another addition into the Charles Dickens canon as we continue to go novel by novel here. And this work, really from the outset, has a very unique gestation. It's the work that Dickens supposedly labored on the most compared to pretty much anything else he had written to that point, which makes sense given that from the beginning this was meant to be very much an autobiographical work. Now, this was never intended to be a complete fictionalized autobiography. Dickens keeps enough of himself out of the work to retain a sort of fictionalized and removed air. But there is a lot of Dickens himself in this work. There are a lot of his personal life experiences as a child and as a young adult that work their way in here either explicitly or subtly. And because of that, you really feel when you read kind of about the story of the creation of this work, you feel the pain and the reliving of these experiences that Dickens puts himself through in order to put this story on the printed page. And because of these ideas, without having read the novels that follow this, I think it is fair to say, based off of the renown that David Copperfield has, that if you were trying to understand Charles Dickens, the person, through his novels, I think something like Oliver Twist will get you part of the way there, as certainly it is a window into his younger years. It is a window into his personal beliefs, but I'm not sure there is anything quite as comprehensively himself as David Copperfield. Certainly not to the point that we're at right now. And David Copperfield as a work was not immediately met with rapturous critical acclaim from the masses, but pretty quickly became one of his most revered, if not his most revered novel by a lot of Dickens' peers. And I think that perception has persisted throughout the years. This continues to be one of Dickens' most well-known novels, right up there with your Oliver Twists, your Great Expectations, Tale of Two Cities, etc., etc. And after having read it for the first time, there is no disagreement on my end. To my eyes, from my perspective, this is absolutely the best Charles Dickens novel written to date. Now, it's interesting, there are a lot of Charles Dickens novels at this point that are very lengthy and that really grapple with a lot of different things kind of going on at one time. A lot of different kind of sidebar elements surrounding maybe this one quote unquote hero's journey. You see that with Nicholas Nickleby. You see that with Barnaby Rudge. You even see that with Dombey and Son to some extent. All of these little kind of peripheral stories and these ideas that, serve as sort of window dressing and augment this core journey. And David Copperfield is, like I say, it does this as well. But I think David Copperfield succeeds in a way that the rest of these novels don't quite as much. That is a relative statement because I enjoy all these other novels, but I think David Copperfield balances this unwieldy, like massive characters, and no mistaking it, there are a lot of characters to kind of keep tabs on, that the book wants you to keep tabs on, that the book wants you to be invested in throughout the whole story. And I think it is really a testament to how Dickens has grown as a world builder, as a characterizer, as a storyteller in general, that he takes these characters and really gives them enough personality to where they really stick in the mind. are very, very distinct. But it also, and I think this is the key, it very much does not go into the explicit stereotyping, the types of comical stereotyping that you see in other Dickens novels. It kind of holds itself back from going quite that far for the most part. You do have more kind of over the top characters, like I think Uriah Heep is probably the most explicit example. He's kind of the foil for the main character of David Copperfield. Uriah is very much kind of this over the top Dickens villain that we have come to expect at this point, but I think he has to be. And what I appreciate about his character, and what I appreciate about all the other characters, is there is justification for their actions and a real humanizing of them, even if it's only brief, that doesn't always happen in other Dickens novels. I think he is good at it in a general sense, but I don't think he was ever as effective at doing it up to this point as he is in David Copperfield. I think all these characters are sympathetic to varying degrees, and their actions are justified to varying degrees. And because of that, you find yourself invested in all of these stories on some level or another. Again, Uriah Heep being one, Steerforth, that character, being another one. Steerforth not really being as much of a villain per se, but very much not one of the main protagonists, if you will. But boy, these main characters are something else. I think the journey that David Copperfield himself takes throughout this book it's a lengthy one. It is an emotionally tumultuous one. And I think people have compared this novel to Jane Eyre in the past. People were making those comparisons even when the novel was released. Charlotte Bronte herself commented on them. And, you know, I don't know if it's to the point where Dickens took inspiration from it. He supposedly claimed that he never read Jane Eyre. But I think the character of David and the character of Jane have a sort of common thread connecting them, not in being headstrong per se, but in that I think David as a character is allowed to make bad choices. He is allowed to make choices that to the reader seem frustrating, seem very confusing, occasionally leave you smacking your head, like, why would you do that? And that concept of a flawed protagonist, I think, is so important to them feeling relatable. And when you consider the autobiographical context, I feel like that is Dickens kind of showcasing his own regrets on how certain aspects of his life developed. I think, without going into detail, I think the romantic interest side of this story is one very clear example of a character making a decision, making an omission perhaps, that seems frustrating and confusing in the moment, but it comes to make sense further down the line, especially as you understand how his own character develops. If you've read the book, you understand which characters I'm referring to here. There's a lot going on, and it is a slow burn, but there's a lot of change happening. I think you're going through about 30-ish years, 25, 30 years probably in the span of this book, a little bit less probably. And, the book takes its time to go through these different aspects of Copperfield's life. I think about half the book is Copperfield as a youth or an adolescent, and about half the book is Copperfield as an adult. But it spends enough time in those sections, and there's enough changes that happen in those sections of his life to where it never felt like it dragged. Which for a book that is, in the edition that I read, in excess of 900 pages, is pretty impressive. And I think once, and this is where it gets into like the type of investment in these characters, to where I can't really describe how the book accomplishes what it does, but I did become invested in the outcomes of some of these characters to the point where the last probably third of the book was very hard for me to actually put down. It was kind of in that rarefied air with Count of Monte Cristo as well, which I read not too long ago, where I wanted that resolution, I wanted that catharsis, and I powered through the rest of it, which says something. You know, these are very distinct characters, and I love. There's so many that I have affection for. Peggotty, David's aunt, the Agnes is another one. I think Mr. Dick, of course. You know, quite a few different characters that just have their own individual arcs as well. I think that's the other piece. I think they all have clear kind of arcs and goals that are either explicitly stated or implied, like, oh, yeah, so-and-so is trying to get on the good side of so-and-so. So-and-so is trying to get together with so-and-so. It just, I think these clearly stated arcs combined with the how relatable and how easily likable a lot of these characters are, I think just it helps you get invested. And that's just, I think, one of the things that Dickens has done well to certain degrees in other novels. I mean, quite obviously, there's a lot of his novels already that I have enjoyed quite a bit, but I think David Copperfield to me feels like a combination of a lot of the things that made Dickens successful before, and it feels like kind of a peak. One thing I will say is that other Dickens novels have a very like acerbic and penetrating sense of humor and a very kind of satirical bent. And David Copperfield has that, but it feels very cushioned. It feels very subdued compared to other works. I think this work really wants you to kind of sit with its people, these people who, again, Dickens is going to have a lot of affection for, because how many of them, probably most of them, based off of real people in his life. And I think Dickens is fine taking an air of like social commentary to these things, but I think he does play this novel a little bit more seriously than some of his other works, and I think that's a good call. I think it works really effectively. I think it's also remarkable how much he was apparently kind of freestyling it creatively, having a very vague idea of characters and general plot directions, but not really knowing how he was going to accomplish everything at the end, in contrast to a lot of his other novels where there are very clear outlines for how he wanted the story to end. So the fact that it all built to the point that it did, and the fact that all the resolutions are so clean, I mean, just I don't think there's a single character arc that doesn't end in a super satisfying way. It's really an outstanding achievement. So I don't have much else to say other than I thought this was fantastic. This is my favorite Charles Dickens novel to date. I expect there are other novels that will compete for that honor as I get to, again, Your Great Expectations, Your Tale of Two Cities. But at this time, I've got nothing to say except this is a phenomenal book. Absolutely fantastic. I think if you were looking to explore kind of early to mid romantic English literature, maybe I might recommend like an Oliver Twist or something that's a little bit shorter than this one to kind of get you into the Dickens style. But to me, David Copperfield is about as close to a must read as a classic book can get. It gets my highest recommendation. Absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited for what else he has to come. And I hope that you all read it. And if you do, let me know your thoughts in the comments. With that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. More videos and reviews are to come, as always. Make sure to hit that bell for notifications and tell a friend as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time right here at your home of the Music Deep Dive.